On June 5, 2014, at exactly 11:52 p.m., a 911 call came through dispatch in Bakersfield, California. The recording lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. To this day, veteran dispatchers who heard that call refused to listen to it again. What made this emergency call so disturbing? Why do law enforcement officials still debate whether proper protocol was followed? And what happened in those final moments before the line went dead? This is one of those cases that changed how 911 operators are trained across the country. A call that started like thousands of others but spiraled into something that would haunt everyone involved. The voice on the other end was calm at first, too calm for what was about to unfold. The dispatcher followed procedure exactly as written, but sometimes procedure isn't enough. The story begins not with the call itself, but 3 weeks earlier, in a quiet suburban neighborhood where nothing ever seemed to happen, where families knew each other by name and kids rode their bikes until the streetlights came on. The kind of place where a 911 call for anything more serious than a medical emergency was rare. Sarah Jennings was 28 years old, a kindergarten teacher at Riverside Elementary. Her neighbors described her as friendly, always the first to wave hello, the type who baked cookies for new families on the block. She lived alone in a modest 2-bedroom house on Maple Drive, a tree-lined street where the biggest concern was usually someone's dog getting loose. Sarah had lived there for 3 years. She was known, she was liked, she was safe, or so everyone thought. Before we go further into what happened that night, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Here at True Crime Vault, we unlock the cases that deserve to be remembered, new investigations every week. And trust me, you'll want to follow this one through to the end. In the weeks leading up to June 5th, Sarah had mentioned to her closest friend, Rebecca Martinez, that she felt like someone was watching her. It started small. A car that seemed to be parked on her street too often. A shadow near her bedroom window that disappeared when she looked directly at it. The feeling that things in her house had been moved slightly when she came home from work. Rebecca later told investigators that she encouraged Sarah to file a police report, but Sarah hesitated. She didn't want to seem paranoid. She didn't want to cause trouble over what might be nothing. On May 30th, 6 days before the 911 call, Sarah mentioned to her coworker David Park that she was considering getting a security system. She said she'd been hearing noises at night, footsteps on her porch, the sound of someone testing her door handles. David suggested she stay with family for a few days, but Sarah insisted she was probably just on edge from watching too many crime documentaries. She laughed it off. That was the last normal conversation anyone would have with her. June 4th was a Wednesday. Sarah taught her kindergarten class as usual. At 3:15 p.m., she was seen at the local grocery store buying supplies for the end-of-year party her class was planning. The security footage shows her smiling, chatting briefly with the cashier about the upcoming summer break. She drove home around 4 p.m. Her next-door neighbor, Margaret Walsh, waved to her as she carried her groceries inside. Everything appeared completely normal. That evening, at approximately 8:30 p.m., Sarah called her mother, Linda Jennings. They spoke for 22 minutes about ordinary things. Family plans for the 4th of July. Sarah's frustration with her car making a strange noise. Linda would later tell investigators that Sarah sounded perfectly fine, maybe a little tired, but nothing that raised any alarm. They ended the call with Sarah saying she was going to take a shower and go to bed early. Linda said, "I love you." Sarah said, "Love you too, Mom." It would be the last time Linda heard her daughter's voice in a normal conversation. What happened between 8:52 p.m., when that phone call ended, and 11:52 p.m. when Sarah dialed 911, remains partially unknown. But investigators were able to piece together some details from evidence found at the scene. Sometime after 9 p.m., Sarah did take that shower. Her bathroom showed she had gotten ready for bed. Her pajamas were laid out. Her phone was charging on her nightstand. But she never got into bed. At 10:17 p.m., Sarah's phone showed an outgoing call to Rebecca that lasted only 3 seconds. Rebecca's phone records confirm she missed the call because she was already asleep. Sarah didn't leave a voicemail. She didn't send a text. This brief, aborted call would later become a crucial piece of the timeline. Something had happened to make Sarah try to reach out, but she either changed her mind or was interrupted. The next known activity on Sarah's phone was a text message sent at 10:44 p.m. It was sent to her mother. The message read, "Everything okay, don't worry, good night." Linda Jennings saw this message when she woke up the next morning. At the time, it seemed perfectly normal. Only later would she realize how unlike Sarah it was. Sarah always used proper punctuation. She always added emojis when texting her mom, and she never sent goodnight texts because they'd already said goodnight on the phone. Between 10:44 p.m. and 11:52 p.m., something happened inside that house on Maple Drive. Something that would lead to the 911 call that now serves as a training tool for emergency dispatchers across 12 states. A call that raises questions about the limitations of emergency response protocol. A call that, even now, 10 years later, people debate online in forums dedicated to 911 recordings and true crime analysis. When the call came through to Kern County Emergency Services, dispatcher Monica Reeves had been on duty for 7 hours of her 12-hour shift. She was a veteran with 8 years of experience, known among her colleagues as unflappable. She'd handled calls involving everything from heart attacks to active shooter situations. She was trained, she was experienced, she was professional. The recording of this call would later be reviewed by oversight committees, analyzed by psychologists, and studied by communication experts. The call began with standard protocol. Monica answered, "911, what's your emergency?" There was breathing on the other end, heavy, quick breaths. Then Sarah's voice, quiet but clear. "Someone's in my house." Monica immediately began her training checklist. "Are you in a safe location right now?" Sarah responded, "I'm in my bedroom closet. The door is locked, but I can hear him downstairs." "Him." Sarah said him. This detail would become important later. Monica asked, "Do you know who this person is?" Sarah's response came after a pause. "I think so, but that doesn't make sense. That can't be right." Monica marked the address as an active break-in, dispatching officers to the location. The nearest unit was 12 minutes away. In a city, 12 minutes might be standard. In this suburban area with lower crime rates, units were spread thin during night shifts. Monica stayed on the line, following protocol perfectly. She kept her voice calm and reassuring. She told Sarah that help was on the way. She asked Sarah if there were any weapons in the house. Sarah said no. Monica asked if Sarah could see any way out, any window she could safely escape through. Sarah said her bedroom was on the second floor, and the window overlooked the backyard, which had no fence access to neighbors. Monica told her to stay quiet, stay hidden, and stay on the line. For the next 2 minutes, the recording captures mostly silence. Sarah's breathing, the faint sound of Monica typing as she updated the dispatch notes. Then, at the 3-minute 14-second mark, something changed. Sarah's breathing became faster. "He's upstairs," she whispered. "I can hear him in the hallway. He's trying door handles." Monica's voice remained steady. "Stay completely quiet. Don't make any sound. Officers are 6 minutes away." But then Sarah said something that made Monica pause. "He's calling my name. He knows I'm here. He knows exactly where I am." The way Sarah said this, according to later testimony from Monica, suggested this wasn't a stranger. This was someone who knew the layout of her house. Someone who knew her habits. "Sarah, do not respond," Monica instructed. "Stay completely silent." The recording captures what happens next with terrible clarity. The sound of a doorknob rattling, Sarah's sharper intake of breath, then a voice, male, muffled through the door. "Sarah, I know you're in there. We need to talk." Monica, hearing this through the phone, made a split-second decision. She instructed Sarah to identify herself to the intruder and inform him that police were on their way. This is standard protocol when the intruder is aware of the victim's location. Sometimes the mention of police is enough to make an intruder flee. Sarah called out, her voice shaking. "The police are coming. They'll be here any minute. You need to leave." The male voice responded, and this is where the recording becomes truly disturbing. "I am the police, Sarah. That's what you don't understand. I'm trying to help you." Monica heard this. The dispatcher notes show she immediately radioed to verify all units responding to the address. All units confirmed they were still en route, the nearest still 4 minutes away. "Sarah," Monica said carefully, "that person is not a police officer. Real officers will announce themselves when they arrive. Stay where you are." But Sarah's response sent a chill through the dispatch center. "Monica, I know him. That's what's wrong. I know exactly who that is, and he's not supposed to be here. He's not supposed to exist anymore." What Sarah meant by that statement has been analyzed extensively. Investigators would later piece together what she was trying to communicate. But in that moment, Monica had seconds to make decisions. "Sarah, who is that person? Can you tell me his name?" The sound of wood splintering cut through the recording. The closet door was being forced open. Sarah's scream. Then her voice, no longer a whisper. "David, stop! What are you doing?" David. The name hit Monica like a physical blow. She quickly scrolled through the dispatch notes she'd been compiling. Sarah's emergency contact information, pulled from utility records, listed a David Park as her coworker. The same David Park who had spoken to her 6 days earlier about getting a security system. But there was more to David Park that Sarah didn't know. More that investigators would uncover in the hours and days following this call. The recording captures a struggle. Sarah's phone hit the floor but remained connected. Monica could hear Sarah pleading, "David, please, I don't understand. Why are you doing this?" David's voice, now clear and chillingly calm. "Because you were going to figure it out. I saw it in your eyes today. You were starting to remember." Remember what? This question would drive the investigation into territory no one expected. Monica stayed on the line, her hands shaking as she typed urgent updates. Suspect identified as David Park. Suspect is known to victim. Officers advised approach with extreme caution. The nearest unit was now 90 seconds away. "David, I don't know what you're talking about," Sarah's voice, desperate now. "Please just leave. We can talk about this tomorrow, please." But David's response stopped everyone who later listened to this recording. "There won't be a tomorrow, Sarah. Not after what I did. Not after what you saw." Monica made another decision in that moment. She activated the emergency broadcast system, sending out a code that every available unit in a 15-mile radius should respond to this address immediately. She could hear David moving around the room, Sarah crying. Then David's voice again. "I'm sorry it has to be this way. I really am. You were always so kind to me." The officers arrived at 11:56 p.m., exactly 4 minutes and 7 seconds after the call began. The recording captures the sound of sirens. Sarah's voice. "They're here! David, they're here!" David's voice, suddenly different, panicked. "You called them? You actually called them?" Then silence. Heavy, loaded silence. Monica stayed on the line, listening to the sound of officers breaching the front door, announcing themselves, clearing the first floor. At 11:58 p.m., officers reached the second floor. They found Sarah's bedroom door open, the closet door broken off its hinges. Sarah was on the floor, unconscious but breathing, a head wound bleeding heavily, and David Park was gone. The bedroom window was open. He had jumped from the second story into the backyard and disappeared into the night. Sarah was rushed to Mercy Hospital, where she underwent emergency surgery for a skull fracture and severe concussion. She remained in a medically induced coma for 3 days. When she woke up, investigators were waiting with questions that would crack open a case that had been cold for 7 years. But before we get to what Sarah revealed, we need to understand who David Park really was. Because the man Sarah knew as her friendly coworker was not who he claimed to be at all. David Park had been working at Riverside Elementary for 2 years. He was hired as a substitute teacher and occasional maintenance helper. His background check had come back clean. His references checked out. He was quiet, reliable, always willing to help. Teachers liked him. Kids weren't afraid of him. He seemed, by all accounts, perfectly normal. But David Park wasn't his real name. His real name was Daniel Porter, and in 2007, he had been the prime suspect in the disappearance of Jennifer Walsh, a 26-year-old woman from Fresno, California. Jennifer had vanished from her apartment with no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle, and no witnesses. Daniel Porter, who had been her neighbor and had expressed romantic interest in her that she did not reciprocate, became the focus of the investigation. But without a body, without physical evidence, and with Daniel having what appeared to be a solid alibi, the case went cold. Jennifer Walsh was never found. In 2008, Daniel Porter moved out of Fresno. He disappeared from public records. He had been working under the name David Park since 2012, using sophisticated identity theft methods that investigators are still analyzing. He had created an entirely new person, complete with social security number, employment history, and clean criminal record. And he had done it specifically to get close to Sarah Jennings. Why Sarah? What was the connection? When Sarah regained consciousness, she told investigators something that turned the entire case inside out. She knew Jennifer Walsh. They had been roommates in college at Fresno State from 2005 to 2007. They had lived together for 2 years before Jennifer's disappearance. Sarah had been interviewed by police back then as a witness, but she had graduated and moved away shortly after Jennifer went missing. Over the years, the memory had faded, pushed back by the trauma of losing a friend and the passage of time. But 3 weeks before the 911 call, something had triggered Sarah's memory. She had seen David Park's reflection in a window at school, and for just a split second, she recognized him. Not as David, but as Daniel, the man who used to stare at Jennifer, the man who used to show up at their apartment unannounced, the man who had given Sarah an uncomfortable feeling that she couldn't quite articulate. Sarah hadn't been sure. It had been 17 years. People change. She convinced herself she was imagining it, but her subconscious knew. That's why she felt watched. That's why she heard noises. That's why, on some instinctive level, she was preparing for danger. David, or Daniel, had realized she was starting to remember. That 3-second phone call to Rebecca, the strange goodnight text to her mother. These were Sarah's attempts to create a record, to leave breadcrumbs, even as her conscious mind refused to accept what was happening. What David said during the attack, "After what you saw," took on new meaning. Investigators believed Sarah had witnessed something related to Jennifer's disappearance but had blocked it out. Maybe she had seen Daniel at their apartment the night Jennifer vanished. Maybe she had heard something, saw something, that her mind had buried as a defense mechanism. David, in his paranoid delusion, believed Sarah was about to expose him. He believed she was about to remember the truth about Jennifer Walsh. The manhunt for David Park, or Daniel Porter, became one of the largest in Central California history. His photo was everywhere. His story was on every news channel. Tips flooded in from across the state. He had been seen at a gas station in Modesto. Someone thought they saw him at a homeless encampment in Sacramento. But days turned into weeks, and David remained gone. Then, on July 3, 2014, 28 days after the attack on Sarah Jennings, a hiker in Sequoia National Forest made a grim discovery. A body hanging from a tree, deep in an area rarely traveled. The identification found on the body was for David Park. Dental records confirmed it was Daniel Porter. He had taken his own life. In his truck, parked at a remote trailhead, investigators found something that would provide closure to at least one family. A handwritten confession, 12 pages detailing what had happened to Jennifer Walsh. He had broken into her apartment in 2007. He had confronted her about rejecting him. There had been a struggle. Jennifer had died, and Daniel had panicked. He described where he had buried her body, in a remote area of the Sierra National Forest. He described how he had cleaned the apartment, how he had made it look like she had simply disappeared. On July 15, 2014, search teams found Jennifer Walsh's remains exactly where Daniel's confession indicated. After 7 years, her family finally had answers, finally had closure, finally could lay her to rest. Sarah Jennings spent 2 months in physical therapy recovering from her injuries. The psychological scars took longer. She left teaching, moved out of state, and has requested privacy that should be respected. She gave one interview to local news in 2016 where she said, "That 911 call saved my life. Monica Reeves saved my life. But I also live with the knowledge that if I had remembered sooner, if I had trusted my instincts, maybe this could have been prevented. Maybe Jennifer's family wouldn't have suffered for 7 additional years." Monica Reeves, the dispatcher, was commended for her handling of the call, but she also requested trauma counseling. In a statement to the press, she said, "You can follow every protocol perfectly and still feel like you could have done more. That call will stay with me forever." The sound of Sarah's fear, the realization that the suspect was someone she knew and trusted, the helplessness of being a voice on the phone while someone's life hung in the balance. It changes you. The 911 recording itself became controversial. Should it be used for training purposes? Does it violate Sarah's privacy? Is it ethical to learn from someone's worst moment? These questions sparked debate within emergency services communities nationwide. Currently, the full audio is restricted, but portions of it, with Sarah's permission, are used in advanced dispatcher training programs. The focus is on Monica's decision-making, her calm demeanor, and her ability to gather critical information even under extreme stress. But there are elements of the call that aren't used in training. The raw terror in Sarah's voice, the chilling calmness of David's, The moment when Sarah realized someone she trusted was there to hurt her. These parts are considered too traumatic, too personal, too human to be reduced to a teaching tool. This case also raised questions about identity theft and background check procedures. How had Daniel Porter managed to create an entirely new identity good enough to pass school district vetting? How many other people might be living under false identities? What gaps exist in our systems that allow predators to reinvent themselves? Jennifer Walsh's family established a foundation in her name dedicated to improving background check technology and supporting families of missing persons. They've advocated for better database integration between states and more thorough vetting procedures for anyone working with vulnerable populations. Sarah Jennings has quietly supported this foundation from a distance, contributing anonymously according to sources close to the family. The house on Maple Drive remained empty for 3 years. In 2017, it was purchased by a new family who knew nothing of its history. The neighborhood has moved on, as neighborhoods do. Kids still ride their bikes until the streetlights come on. Families still wave hello to each other. But those who lived there in 2014 still remember. They remember the night the quiet street filled with police cars. They remember Sarah being carried out on a stretcher. They remember learning that someone they saw almost daily, someone who seemed so normal, was capable of such deception and violence. The psychological impact of this case extends beyond those directly involved. It touches on fears many people have, but rarely voice. What if someone you know isn't who they claim to be? What if that friendly coworker, that helpful neighbor, that person you see regularly and think nothing of, is hiding something dark? How do you trust your instincts when our brains are wired to see patterns and familiarity as safety? Sarah's case became a study in delayed trauma recognition. Psychologists who reviewed her case noted that she exhibited classic signs of repressed memory. Her brain had protected her from remembering something too painful, too frightening. But as Daniel re-entered her life under a different name, her subconscious recognized the threat even as her conscious mind resisted. The feeling of being watched, the paranoia, the hesitation to report her fears because they seemed irrational, all of these were her mind trying to warn her of danger it couldn't quite articulate. If this case intrigues you, make sure to subscribe to True Crime Vault for more in-depth investigations. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts. Should 911 recordings like this be made public? Do they serve an educational purpose, or do they exploit trauma? Let me know what you think. The legacy of that 4-minute, 37-second phone call continues to ripple outward. It changed how some dispatchers approach calls involving known suspects. It influenced training on recognizing when a victim might have repressed memories or blocked information. It sparked conversations about the ethical use of emergency recordings. And it reminded everyone that sometimes the most terrifying scenarios aren't the ones involving strangers, but the ones involving people we thought we knew. Today, Monica Reeves continues to work as a 911 dispatcher. She's trained hundreds of new operators. She's handled thousands more calls. But in interviews, she said that June 5, 2014, remains the call that defined her career. Not because she did anything extraordinary, but because it showed her the limitations of being a voice on the phone. The desperate desire to reach through the line and physically protect someone. The weight of knowing that every word, every decision could mean the difference between life and death. Sarah Jennings has rebuilt her life in a new state. Under circumstances she's chosen to keep private. Through legal representatives, she's stated that she wants to be remembered not as a victim, but as a survivor. Someone who trusted her instincts even when she couldn't explain them. Someone who made that call to 911 when it mattered most. Someone who, through her ordeal, helped solve a 7-year-old missing persons case and brought a family closure they desperately needed. Jennifer Walsh's family has said publicly that while nothing can bring Jennifer back, knowing the truth has allowed them to stop waiting, to stop wondering, to stop imagining endless scenarios about what might have happened. The grave they visit now in Fresno has Jennifer's body beneath it, not just a memorial marker. And that, they say, has made all the difference in their grieving process. The case files on Daniel Porter remain open for research purposes. Criminologists study how he managed to evade detection for so long, how he created a new identity so thoroughly, what warning signs might have been missed, whether there are other victims, other crimes that might be connected to him. So far, no evidence has linked him to any other disappearances or attacks. But the investigation continues quietly in the background. What happened on that night in June 2014 serves as a reminder that true crime isn't entertainment for those who live through it. It's trauma, it's loss, it's fear that never fully goes away. It's the sound of footsteps that make your heart race for years after. It's the hypervigilance that becomes your new normal. It's the therapy sessions, the medications, the nights you can't sleep, because closing your eyes means reliving the worst moments over and over. But it's also resilience. It's the choice to keep going. It's the strength to share your story if it might help someone else. It's the dispatcher who stays on the line and guides you through hell. It's the investigators who don't stop until they find answers. It's the families who turn grief into advocacy. It's the communities that come together to support survivors and honor the memories of those who were lost. This case reminds us to trust our instincts even when we can't rationally explain them, to take those feelings of unease seriously, to reach out for help before it becomes an emergency, to create safety plans and support networks, to remember that it's not paranoia if the threat is real, and sometimes our brains know things our conscious minds haven't processed yet. It also reminds us that the people trained to answer 911 calls are heroes we never see. They sit in rooms full of screens and headsets, handling humanity's worst moments with calm professionalism. They follow protocols designed to save lives, knowing they'll sometimes hear those lives end despite everything they do. They carry the weight of voices they've heard, calls they couldn't forget, people they couldn't save, and those they could. And they come back to work the next shift, because someone has to answer when people dial those 3 numbers in their darkest moments. The 911 call from Sarah Jennings to Monica Reeves lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. In that time, decisions were made that saved a life and solved a 7-year-old murder. Information was gathered that would lead to justice for Jennifer Walsh's family. A predator was identified and ultimately stopped. And 2 women, one hiding in a closet and one sitting at a dispatch desk miles away, formed a connection that neither will ever forget. Listen at your own risk, the title warns. Because once you understand what happened during that call, once you hear the fear and the determination and the sheer human will to survive, you can't unhear it. You can't unknow it. It becomes part of your understanding of how fragile safety is, how quickly the familiar can become dangerous, and how important it is that when someone calls for help, there's someone trained and ready to answer. These aren't just stories. These are real people, real lives, and real mysteries that deserve to be remembered. Sarah Jennings deserves to be remembered as someone who survived. Jennifer Walsh deserves to be remembered as someone who was loved and lost and finally found. Monica Reeves deserves to be remembered as someone who did everything right under impossible circumstances. And Daniel Porter deserves to be remembered as a cautionary tale about the dangers of obsession, the lengths people will go to hide their crimes, and the fact that sometimes the person you least suspect is exactly who you should fear most. This has been True Crime Vault, unlocking the cases that deserve to be remembered.